Hey guys, welcome back to Forgotten Spirit Halloween Props. Today what I have for you guys is a really cool animatronic that is one of my personal favorites. It wasn't necessarily sold at Spirit Halloween, but I think this animatronic in particular helped in the development of another personal favorite animatronic of mine that was sold at Spirit Halloween, and also that helped play in the development of its partner. But in this video, we're going to be talking about the Convulsing Zombie from Halloween City 2012. First off, where should I start with this particular animatronic? Well, what I can say about this animatronic right off the bat is that this animatronic is one of the only fully working animatronics that I have that I bought way back when I was first starting to get into these animatronics from Spirit Halloween and other Halloween stores. Now this particular one right here was not the one that I purchased in 2013 for like $60, $70. This was actually one that I grabbed off of eBay for a pretty cheap price last year, towards the end of last year. So that is pretty interesting in and of itself. Of course, not many people really know about this animatronic. I feel like this is kind of one of the more forgotten animatronics, and hence why I'm making a video of it to show you guys and kind of talk about this animatronic and its history. Now, as I mentioned, this animatronic was sold at Halloween City and was made by Tekky Toys in 2012. Now, this animatronic had some problems with it. Like I said before, being the first of its kind, it has some quirks. But the biggest con to this animatronic, in my opinion, is the module itself. Which is kind of interesting, because Convulsing Zombie and the module that makes it convulse doesn't work too well. It's kind of one of those oxymoron, anticlimactic things. Now, the problems that this animatronic had with its module wasn't really the circuit board or the motors going dead or any serious electrical issues, but rather some mechanical problems. And the most problematic part of this entire animatronic is the gears. Now, when I say the gears, I'm not talking about the gears that are actually inside of the gearbox off to the side. I'll show you guys the module. You'll know what I'm talking about here in a little bit. But not the gears that are actually in the gearbox, but the external gears that control the convulsing motion. The gear that actually connects to, well, first off, what I should say, the way this animatronic works is you have the tower piece on the side, which has like a little square kind of connector that goes up, and then there's a bar or the bracket thing that sits on top of that that screws in. There's two screws, one in the front, one in the back. And then there's the connecting piece that sits on top that's actually attached to the bar itself, and then that goes up, and the spine connects to that, and then the head connects to that. The issue I'm talking about with this animatronic is there's a square shaft, a metal square shaft, that's connected to the piece that makes it pivot. And that square shaft goes through one of the holder pieces on the side, and then goes through the other into a little round part. Like I said, I'm going to show you guys when we get to the module. But there's that silver square shaft, and there's a gear that connects to that square shaft, and that gear rotates the square shaft, and then that pushes the bar back and forth, and that's what controls his convulsing motion. And the issue with that plastic gear was, over time, as this thing was used nonstop, the gear eventually would develop small splits in it, and it would eventually not grip the square shaft very well, and it would start slipping, and it wouldn't convulse anymore, to the point where it wouldn't even work at that point. Like, the motor would just run, it would get stuck in one direction, either forwards or backwards, and it just wasn't a very good solution. It wasn't a very good idea. And this problem actually did happen with my original one. About a year after I bought it, it had extreme use on it, of course. I really used to use the crap out of those things in the early days. The gear did split, and I started to see that problem happen. And unfortunately, it never got better. It only got worse until the gear pretty much was useless at that point, didn't grip at all. Until recently, I replaced it with a metal gear, a welded gear that I put in there that I surprisingly did break, but I've since fixed it. So that was kind of a design flaw on Tekky Toys' part with this animatronic. I wish they had done it a little differently. I wish they didn't use crappy plastic gears and, you know, square shaft pieces that can break easily. That is one of the biggest flaws with this particular animatronic as a whole. But anyways, I believe I've talked for long enough, so let's go in and get a closer look of this animatronic, and I'll kind of explain some more things as we do so, because standing here, you guys staring at this thing for as long as we have, kind of hard to talk about it like this. Okay, so here's the animatronic up close, and don't mind the shadows. But here is the face of the animatronic. Very iconic. I really like those white eyes that Tekky Toys used. It makes it look all the creepier, especially when the animatronic is not on. Of course, you have the very iconic long, very stringy hair that in the video it's much straighter than what it is in person. Of course, you have some blood detailing on the shirt here. There's also some blood or some gash marks on the face on his left and right side. Of course, this guy has the very iconic blue pants and the shoes, which actually do have blood on them, as you can see. Now, I believe this was actually one of the first Tekky animatronics to have a metal base. So in a way, this was kind of a ahead of its time animatronic for Spirit Halloween, at least in 2012. Of course, going down to his hands here, he came with the very cool looking hands that are very scarred up with the goblet thing, I guess, if that's what it's called. Of course, you have the chain bracket. Again, this was kind of one of the first of these animatronics that actually allowed you to kind of properly display it with some help of some add-ons to the animatronic. The Convulsing Nurse was the second animatronic to actually have this type of thing where you can kind of play around and doctor it up to make it look cooler. So again, a very ahead of its time animatronic. And there's the other one. Now these are very, very thin. The Convulsing Nurse's chain brackets actually are a lot thicker than that. So there's not too many issues with those. But they are a little thin. Now, of course, the hands themselves, the shirt is just glued to the hands, which kind of bugs me because this hot glue that they use is pretty strong, which honestly, I don't know what hot glue they use to get it to stick on that well. Because on my other one, I have hot glued the shirt many times to the hands and it keeps falling off, so I don't know what hot glue they use. But anyways, that's kind of the way that they did it. And the hands are just stuffed with foam. Now, something I want to talk about, if you ever do own this animatronic, is when you display this guy, do not ever run this thing with the arms hanging down like this. You always want to make sure that you keep the arms, if you're going to, I apologize for the awkward angle, but if you're going to display this guy, you want to make sure you keep the arms weight off of the actual shoulders here, because that's actually the issue of why these things broke so much, because the gear that they used in the module is so thin that it can't handle the weight. Now, the head is padded, and it does add a little bit of weight, and the shirt, of course, you know, adds some weight to it as well, but it's not quite as heavy enough to break the gear. So if you run this thing, just make sure you have the arms hanging up, so, you know, there's a wire actually right here. If you can feel there's no tension on that wire when it's hung up, then you know you're good. Same thing with this arm. You could probably run this arm a little more slack because it's not quite as heavy as that hand is. But I just thought I might point that out because I have seen that happen where the arms were hanging down like that and it wore out the thrashing gear. So here's the module in better lighting. I turned my flash on my camera. So here's the gearbox I was talking about. So as you can see, this is the thrashing bar right here. This is where the pole connects. There's a square piece which this screws into, one in the front, one in the back. There's also two relay switches there, which this plastic piece comes with this animatronic, and so that protects these relay switches from the cloth getting caught, because I've actually seen a couple of videos where the cloth gets caught in the relay switches and it interferes with the motion. Oddly enough, when I got this thing, even though this was pretty much a brand new animatronic, this was not included. It wasn't attached to the module. It was in the box, but it just wasn't attached, so I had to hot glue it on again. That's why it looks a little messy. But anyways, like I was saying, the piece connects here, and then it goes down, and the square shaft connects to the piece right here, because this pivots, and that one also pivots over there. But it runs through here, connects to that square, you can barely see it, but that gear right there, which is square shaft gear, runs through that gear and then kind of rests on the other side. And that big gear right there, that's the gear that will split and wear out. The bottom gear, I actually haven't seen that happen too much, so hopefully it doesn't happen to this one. But the top gear will split. And that's also the other reason why you want to run this thing without the arm weight, because the arms will add a considerable amount of weight and really put a lot of stress on the gear and prematurely break it, possibly. Now I want to turn your attention over to the actual settings of this animatronic. Of course, you have your on setting, which is sound activation. There's a sound sensor right there. This guy also has a motion sensor, which is pretty common for these animatronics. This one's no exception. It's just a basic light detector. It's really no big deal. He also has an off setting and a foot pad setting. And of course, this was before 2013. This animatronic still uses the old foot pad harness. You also have a try-me-button jack, which is kind of unusual for an animatronic like this. Pretty much what that is if the box had a hole in it where you could push the button and hear the sound, there'd be a button hooked up to that, and then while it was in the box, you could kind of hear the sound that it made before you purchased the animatronic. Now, one thing I do want to mention here with this animatronic really fast is the type of connector he uses is one of those old junky styled crappy connectors that actually do wear out really, really fast. So if you have this animatronic, try not to assemble it and disassemble it too many times, because you will wear the pins out and then this won't make good connection anymore. So just make sure that you don't unplug and plug this thing back in too many times as far as the that connection goes. But otherwise, this is a very robust module. As thin as it looks, it's actually quite sturdy. Like I said, the old one that I have for my other convulsing zombie is still working fine. So, really, and good design. Alright, so I've went ahead and plugged in the animatronic, and as you can see, as I was talking about, I have hung up the arms. Now that looks a little ridiculous, but I'm only doing that because I really have nowhere else to hang the arms in the video. But you just mainly want to hang the arms so that most of the pressure is taken off from the upper body. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and activate this animatronic. Like I said, he is sound activated or motion activated. The motion sensor, the shirt's covering it up, so I'm just going to use the sound activation. So anyways, here we go. One of the features that I really do like with this animatronic that I really don't see very much on the nurse or even the werewolf is that head tilt back feature. Now I know on the nurse her head still tilts back, but it doesn't tilt back quite as much as his head does. Now I'm sure that his head tilting back that far does have something to do with the gears prematurely wearing out and breaking. However, if you've taken most of the weight off from the actual arms, the head tilting back doesn't really add any more weight. It just shifts it around a little bit. But it's really nothing major. But I really do like that feature of this animatronic, because that's one thing we don't really see from these animatronics now. Mostly when we go to Spirit Halloween and see an animatronic, some movements are, or pretty much all the movements are motor controlled. But this guy does not have a motor in his head, he just has the motion sensor in the eyes, and they were able to achieve that movement with just the one motor. So really, really cool that he does have that feature, and I'm really glad that Tekky Toys did add that feature in, because it really does kind of help to bring the whole thing together. Now that motor that you heard of it convulsing is a pretty loud motor. On my other one, it's not so loud, but this guy, it's a pretty loud motor. As you can hear, it's very loud. He's also very sound sensitive as well, so you'll have no problems activating him during like a haunt or some kind of display if you want to put him out in your yard. So, but he does look cool when he's convulsing. It's kind of off-putting. And especially with his arms chained up like that, he looks really, really special. Now, just one more quick thing before we get out of here is I do actually have this guy's original box. However, it is packed away right now, and this was the only animatronic I could really get to that isn't super packed away in my closet, so I couldn't get it out, but I do have the original box. I also have the original instructions with this guy that were included, and they're in good shape as well. So anyways, guys, I want to thank all of you so much for watching this video. If there's anything that I left out, or if there's any questions that you guys have with this particular animatronic, be sure to leave them down below in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up or give this a like. And if you're new, do consider subscribing, because there's going to be a lot more cool review videos uploaded to this channel. I actually have one planned for another animatronic that I own as well, and that video is going to be coming out pretty soon as well. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel, do subscribe to this channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next animatronic review. Thanks a lot.